Okay, so this is my recording on the ACT election 2020. This is designed for my friends and family to be able to see how I go about choosing who to vote for and where I try to exercise my democratic right as a citizen. If you like this video, let me know. I might even publish it online if people think it's worthwhile enough. So when we talk about elections, and this is not just for the ACT election, but for any election actually, what I try and do is strategic voting. So that means for me that I choose the way to vote that has the most impact on the points where my vote might pivot the decision for the election from one candidate to another or from one party to another party. Because we're talking about politics, of course, we're talking about voting for the least bad option instead of the candidates that you like or the parties that you like the most, because more than likely you're probably like me and you're a little bit disenchanted with politics. So we choose the least bad option. So the ACT is a little different in how it does its elections. Easiest way to do this is to have a look at a bit of a map. This is a map for the redistribution. So we've got 5 electorates in the ACT, each with 5 members, as you can see. We've got one for Gungahlin, Belconnen, Woden and Western Creek, Tuggeranong and Canberra Central, Kingston, Fyshwick, and basically the rest of it to the east. So currently the way the election has gone in 2016 and the way the parliament looks at the moment is we've got those 25 seats, 12 of them are Labor, 2 of them are the Greens, and 11 of them are Liberal. You can see this is all the elections to 2016. As you can see, there's more candidates, more politicians rather, in the ACT than there previously was before 2016. We used to have 17 candidates and now we have 25. So, as you can probably tell from this graph here, their current standing for the Parliament is 12 Labor, 2 Greens, and 11 Liberal, and that means we have a Labor-Greens coalition together. That's not the coalition in the federal sense, where we've got the coalition between Liberals and the Nationals. It's a coalition as in 2 organisations working together to pass legislation. We have 5 members in each of the 5 districts. Electorates even, and what this means is that most of these electorates will have 2 Liberal and 2 Labor elected, and then the 5th seat will be up for grabs. And most of the time, that 5th seat will go to Labor, Libs, or the Greens. There is one exception to this in Kurrajong, which is this electorate here. Instead of being 2 Liberal, 2 Labor, and the 5th seat going to one of the 3, we've got 2 Labor, 1 Greens, and 1 Liberal, with the 5th seat going to one of the 3. The ACT is different again because we have a contest between candidates as well as a contest between parties. So this looks fairly similar to a small Senate ballot paper. Instead of having a billion rows, we've only got 7 or whatever. This is just a sample, as you can see. This is directly from the ACT Elections website. And what we've got here is no top section where you can place your vote for a party. You must vote for the individual people in the parties. It also says that you must vote at least 1 to 5 in the order of your choice. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means for us as strategic voters in a bit. So when we talk about elections, how do we have power as voters? Well, we have power in 2 ways. Most of you will be familiar with the first one. We elect people to Parliament, so we get to choose who we vote for, and that vote will lead to electing someone, preferably the person that you think is the most qualified or the least bad for the job. The second thing that we have, and the second piece of power that we have, especially in the ACT, is we get election funding. So it's a little known thing that your votes are worth money to the political parties, and in fact in the ACT they're worth $8.62 or 862 cents to the political parties. Now this is where I'm going to put in my first example. Okay, we've got our little ballot paper here. This is for the electorate of Yerraby, and let's say that I really like the ACT Greens and I want to vote 1 ACT Greens. Well, that means I vote 1 for ACT Greens, and it doesn't matter what other votes I have. This one vote means that $8.62 will be going to the Greens. Okay, so that's the first thing to keep in mind. Okay, so now let's talk about electing people to Parliament. Well, what actually matters when it comes to electing them into Parliament? Well, for this, we're going to look at the ABC website. I'm just going to take you there. So we go to the ABC website where we've got politics here, elections, ACT election, and then election preview. I think this is the best possible resource if you're going to look up the ACT election, or most elections really. Anthony Green is a national treasure. Key seats is where we're going for this. So when we think about voting strategically, what we want to do is we want to look at where our votes are going to matter the most. So in what order do we want to put the parties or the candidates so that we get to pick between the two most likely parties or two most likely candidates to elect? So most of the time in the ACT, it's going to be Liberal versus Labor versus the Greens. There is one exception to that potentially. But it means that the order that you put these three parties in and the candidates within those parties is the thing that matters. So we'll go through an example a bit later. But what I want you to remember is that we're looking at the pivot points. So where your vote is going to matter between the options that exist. The only other thing that we're going to be potentially paying attention to here is exhaustion, which is you may not need or want to continue your vote past 5. You must go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to make your vote valid, but you can go past 5 if you wish to. Let's talk quickly about the parties. This is not a partisan video, so I'm not telling you about my opinion here. The main parties that matter are the three majors: ACT Labor, the Greens, and the Canberra Liberals. ACT Greens and Canberra Liberals. There's one other party that potentially might matter for the electorate of Belconnen, which is the Belko Party. I'm not going to talk too much about Labor, Liberal and Greens. Most people who watch this will already have an opinion about those, and I'm not interested in getting into the politics, like I said. But the Belko Party warrants a little bit of extra talk, just because it's a new party and people probably aren't familiar with them. Bill Stefaniak is the leader of the Belko Party. Belko Bill, apparently. The important thing to note here is that he was the leader of the Liberal Party between 2006 and 2007. The other thing to note about the Belko Party is Chick Henry is a candidate, and he's the founder of Summernats. So this probably tells us that the Belko Party is assumably right of centre, and if they were elected into Parliament, probably would look to form government with the Liberals if they had the opportunity to. Though it is, of course, possible that they do something else. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this election funding thing, because there's an extra caveat to it. We get to give $8.62 to whichever party we give our first preference vote to. However, there's a catch. You must get, the party that you're giving your first vote to must obtain at least 4% of the total number of first preference votes cast in an electorate. Now that's for the political party. If you're voting for an independent, then it's still 4%, but they have to get that for themselves specifically. Talking a little bit about this in relation to previous elections in 2016. In 2016, this is the ACT elections website again for the 2016 results for the party. There were only money given out to 5 groups. We had Labor, Liberal, Greens, Sex Party, who I'll talk about in a second, and an independent. The independent was Hyun King. As you can see, they got, or Kim Hyun, sorry, I'm probably pronouncing that horribly, 5% of the vote. And in fact, there's actually, all of this stuff is publicly available reports and whatnot, so you can see how much money was given out in the 2012 and 2016 elections. Again, this is from the elections ACT, and you can see that these 5 groups got funding. The funding has increased. This isn't a video about that. It's just to let you know that your vote matters. Going back to the parties just for a second, I'm not going to bring up any information about the Australian Sex Party, ACT, because they are no longer a political party that operates in the ACT. I don't believe they operate anywhere in Australia, so they're not relevant to this video. Just a quick note on that funding as well. If you didn't want to give $8.62 to a political party, there is a way of making sure that happens. what you should do is you should choose a political party that you don't think will get 4% of the vote and put your one into that party, or an independent you don't think will get 4% of the vote. If you just hate all politicians, but you still want to have your vote matter for the election of a particular political party, put your vote with the independent put your one vote for the independent or the political party that you prefer that is not one of the big ones that I'm about to go through. All right, so let's quickly talk about, when we're talking about strategic voting, let's talk about our assumptions in regards to what we expect to happen. Mostly, I just rely on this information from Anthony Green. He's a national treasure, like I said. Fantastic person, fantastic commentator, really good analysis. And if you go to this key seats thing, just have a bit of a read. This big block of text will give you what you need to know. I will summarize it later in the video as the last thing that I do before I sign off. But essentially, what we want to do is just assume that everyone votes roughly the same as last year. Okay, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, especially in 2020, but if we assume that people vote roughly similarly to last year, we can assume that this distribution of votes is fine. And when we're strategically voting, that assumption is the best that we can do without entering into the realm of speculation. So another thing to keep in mind when you're voting for individuals in the ACT election, and this is different to a federal election, we need to look at a ballot paper, and we realize that we have to vote for the individual candidates. We can't just vote for the party across the top. When I'm strategically voting, there is potential gain to be made to being able to choose between, say, Andrew Barr and Rachel Stephen Smith, or maybe Michael Brewer and Shane Rattenbury. Your preferences for candidates matter, and in fact, because most people just vote straight down the line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that means that if you do have a preference for a candidate, putting them first actually does make a difference. Now, for me, I don't really think that the candidates are particularly different from each other most of the time. There is things you can do to look them up. Obviously, having a look at them on the internet. That most of them have social media profiles and will tell you what their ideologies are. You can also have a look at their voting history in the ACT Legislative Assembly website. I'm not going to do that here. If you'd like to do that, you can. But the assumption that I make when I'm doing this kind of strategic voting is that all of the candidates are actually essentially the same. Most candidates will vote with their party, and although there will be differences between the candidates, and you can leverage that difference, for me, that difference is going to be marginal or small. And I think that if you're going to make that decision, what you want to do is you want to go to the key seats and read this block of text and figure out who Anthony Green believes is the person that is going to be the two people that are going to be most likely to contest that 5th seat, and then the order for those candidates matters. So that's what I have to say about choosing candidates in the ACT election. It is powerful, but it's not something I'm going to go through here in this video. Okay, so here we're going to go through a couple of examples about how we'd fill out the ballot paper, given the things that we've talked about regarding electoral funding and also regarding the preferences that we might have. So I've got 2 examples to go through. The first one is that we actually like to give our money to Labor. So we want Labor to have our dollars, but the contest is actually between the Libs and the Greens. So the way we strategically vote here is we would put our 1 in the ACT Labor boxes. So let's say we like DPAC, so we put our 1 vote in DPAC. And then all of our other preferences don't matter until we get to either the Liberals or the Greens. So we could literally fill out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm just making this up. Okay. And now we decided we want to vote for the Liberals and the Greens. So we would like to vote for the Liberal Party because we don't like the Greens in this particular example. So next what we do is we do 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Then it doesn't matter again what we do, so long as the Greens are after that. So we could go 16, 17, and it would have exactly the same impact if we did 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay? So the point that I'm trying to make here is that our 1 matters, this matters, and then the order between these two matters. Okay, which way round you put these matters. The 1 gives the dollars, and the order depends on the electorate, depends on whether or not the contest is between Liberals and Greens. That's what our example is here, or someone else. So let's do another example. This time we think an independent's going to get to 4% of the vote, and we'd like to see them continue to contest the next election. Maybe we want to give them a bit of funding. I think this is a bit of a moonshot for the ACT, as you probably hear in a bit, but it's possible. Let's say that we really like the Animal Justice Party for whatever reason. So again, we put our 1 under the Animal Justice Party. That gives us the dollars, okay? And then the contest for this particular electorate is actually Labor versus Greens. So again, nothing matters after we put our 1 there other than the order we do our Labor and Greens in. So we could do next, we could just go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. like that. We could do it like that, or we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Both of those would have exactly the same result because we put the Greens ahead of Labor in this example. Okay, and I've got one more example that I'm going to go through here. So this is going to be an example where we use exhaustion, which is choosing to not use the rest of your votes to basically send a political statement or to deny a particular political party your vote. So in this particular example, we're going to assume that we're in the perfect center, and we, finding it difficult to choose between the Libs and the Labor, but actually we really hate the Greens. Now in this example, we're going to say that we want the dollars to go to the Labor Party. We've decided that's where we're going to go, and the contest is between Labor and Liberal. But we've decided we hate the Greens. The Greens are just the worst. They're no good. So in this case, of course, we're going to put our 1 with Labor, and we could choose to exercise some discretion over which candidate we pick. So let's say we like Georgia Phillips, we'll put a 1 with Georgia, and then perhaps we like Deepak next, so we'll do 2, and then we could, we like Tom and Suzanne and Michael, okay? And then we'll go over here with the Liberals, and we're going to do 6, 7, and then 8. Maybe we think Alistair Coe's fine, but he's not that great, so we're going to do 9, and then 10. Now, we can fill out other preferences as well. Perhaps we think the Labor DLP is okay, so we're going to do 11 and 12 here, and the Progressives are alright, so we can do a 13 and a 14 here. This might not be a very realistic example, but then we're just going to let our vote expire. So because we've done 1 to 5, we're all good. Our vote is in fact formal or valid, but we've not provided our vote to any of these parties. And you can see the Greens is one of those parties. So we've decided we're going to exercise our democratic right to exclude these parties from getting our vote so that we will never elect one of them. So that's the other example we've gone through. But the important thing to note here, of course, is that first we've got our dollars to ACT Labor in this case, and then the contest is between the Libs and the Labor, and we've picked one or the other of those. Okay, so pick your dollars, and then figure out what the contest is, and pick between the two parties that you think are most likely to win that contest. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the individual electorates. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through in order that we've got them here on the key seats page of the ABC website. Brindabella is our Tuggeranong electorate. Currently there are 3 Liberals and 2 Labor. The contest, if you read this block of text, is likely to go be between Labor and Liberal. So if you pick between these two, you'll be on solid footing. There is a possibility that the Greens will win as well, but it's less likely. Sex Party doesn't exist in this election. Ginninderra, it looks like we've got this electorate has 3 Labor currently, 2 Liberals, so the 5th seat went to Labor, but the vote share was favouring the Greens. There's a big block of text explaining how that happened, but it's likely in this situation that we'll have the 5th seat going between Labor and the Greens. So if you're in this electorate, pick the least bad of the two options there and put your vote for that party ahead of the other. Kurrajong. So for Kurrajong, this is the centre electorate. This is the only electorate where the split's violated. So Labor 2, Greens 1 and Liberal 1, with the 5th seat going to one of the other parties. It's likely to be a contest between the Libs and Labor, so pick between those two. Murrumbidgee. Have we done Ginninderra already? Oh, I missed Ginninderra. Stuff it. Okay, so looks like I'll do a cut and I'll have to go back and put this back there. So I'm going to start again at Brindabella. So Brindabella is the Tuggeranong seat. So the Tuggeranong seat, sorry. Okay, so now on to the specific electorates. So Brindabella currently has 3 Liberals and 2 Labor. The 5th seat, so it's 2 Liberals, 2 Labor for the 2020 election, and the 5th seat is likely to be between the Libs and the Labor Party. There's a big block of text explaining that even though the Greens got a little bit more vote share, it's not expected necessarily to go between... No, let me restart that again one more time. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at our electorates. Do a little bit more of a deep dive on that. This is all based on the Key Seats website on the ABC. In Brindabella, we've got 3 Liberals currently and 2 Labor. The 5th seat is looking like it's going to be a contest between the Greens and the Liberal Party, with an outside chance that the Labor Party could be third. There's a big block of text explaining what's going to happen here, and the lead Green candidate is Jonathan Davis. In Ginninderra, this is the Belconnen electorate, and now thus we have the problem with the Belko Party. The Belko Party is somewhat of a wild card. We're not entirely certain what's going to happen there, but the current split is 3 Labor, 2 Liberal, and what we'd expect to see is that the contest is going to be 3-way between the Labor, the Greens, and the Belko Party, with more than likely between Labor and Greens for that 5th seat. Obviously, this is the only electorate where you can vote for the Belko Party, and if you wanted to give your electoral funding to the Belko Party, you need to put your 1 in the Belko Party slot. Kurrajong's next. This is the middle electorate. Currently, this is the only one that violates the 2-2 principle, which we were talking about earlier, 2 Labor and 2 Liberal. In this electorate, instead, we have 2 Labor, 1 Liberal, and 1 Greens, with the 5th electorate being fought out. It's expected to probably still go to the Liberal Party, but it could be a fight between the Liberals and Labor, with an outside chance that the Greens could take a second seat if their vote share increases a lot. Murrumbidgee. So currently this is the electorate that has the second Greens seat out of the 25 members of Parliament. 2 Liberal, 2 Labor, and then the Greens got over the line last time with Labor preferences and preferences from the other group. This is almost certainly going to be a contest between the Liberal Party and the Greens, so if you're in Murrumbidgee, pick the least bad option between those two. Yarrabee is the final electorate. This is Gungahlin. Currently it's 3 Labor, 2 Liberal, and we're almost certainly looking at a contest here between Labor and the Greens for the 5th seat, and that is that went the way of Labor last time because of the tram. Who knows which way it's going to go this time, but if we had to guess, it's probably slightly more favoured towards Labor. Another note about the Yarrabee, and I'll talk about the other leaders in a sec. Alastair Coe is the leader of the Liberal Party, and they're in Yarrabee, which is in Gungahlin. The other 2 leaders of the 2 other major parties are in Kurrajong. Shane Rattenbury is leader of the Greens, which is why the Greens vote is so high, and Andrew Barrs got more than a quota by himself as the Labor leader as well. Hopefully that's helpful for you when it comes to the ACT election. Let me know if you like it, and good luck with the election. You can early vote now. Just a really quick plug for voting. You should do it. You should vote early. There's plenty of places to go. You just go to elections.act.gov.au, find some polling places. I walked past one today. And I really encourage you to vote because it is one of the only ways that individuals like us have any power in the political system, especially in the ACT, where we get to give out funding to the political parties, and there's some pretty stringent caps on the amount of election spending that political parties can partake in as well. So in the ACT, we get a little bit more power than normal, and I think we should exercise that power. Thanks very much.